Very good morning, students. Welcome to IIT JEE Foundation and our Focus C program by Krishnaveni Talent Schools and Mastermind Schools. So once again, I welcome all the class 8th students for today's session. Durapalli branch, Mastermind Schools, and good to see Falaknama back again. And Shravanti, I don't know from which branch. Welcome you all. As you all can see on the screen, and my subject is physics. We are in class 8th. Our new chapter, the syllabus of test 4, topic friction. And today we are in the session number 1. So as per the schedule, we have to complete the one chapter in 1 month. But due to holidays, we are unable to complete them. So you have to work little more hard compared to the previous to cover the syllabus or to go through the syllabus, right? So here we can see the new chapter, friction. Very, very important type of force. So what is friction? Friction is a force. Friction is, it is a force comes into play. When it will come? Comes into play when two bodies are in contact. When two bodies are in contact. This is a natural force, right? It is a natural force. It is a natural. Nobody produce this force. Neither you are producing by your hand or by anything. It is God's given force. That's why it's natural force. It comes into play when two bodies. Suppose when you are placing one book on table, or when you are walking on the floor, your legs are in contact with the floor, then this force comes into play. When book is placed on table, between the book and table, the force comes into play. When ball is throwing on the floor, frictional force comes into play. Almost everywhere, you can find this kind of natural force. And it is a natural force which comes into play when two bodies are in contact. Means it is a contact force also, you can call it as. It is a, just a minute. It is a contact force. Means when two bodies in contact, it will come. So it is a contact force. There are two types of force are there, contact and non-contact. So note these 2 points. Right. When two bodies are in contact, this force will come into play. Right. Friction is a natural force which comes into play when two bodies are in contact. Hence, it is called a contact force. Wherever two bodies are in contact, this force comes into play. Clear? Such a natural force which is exist in nature. So imagine if there is no frictional force, I cannot hold even pen also. The holding of pen is possible because of frictional force between my fingers and pen. If frictional force is not there, pen will fall down. Or frictional force is not there, it will fall down. You cannot walk also. Right? Very important force. So this force, what is the specialty of this force is? It acts opposite to the direction of motion. Opposite to the direction of motion. So when body is moving in one direction, in opposite direction, force will come into. Suppose you roll the ball, take the ball and roll it on floor. After some distance, ball is stopping. Why it is stopped? Because of the frictional force only. Means the body, the force is this direction, the motion is this direction, the frictional force is this direction. So frictional force always acts opposite to the direction of motion. Third point. Okay, note down these points, right? Opposite to the direction of motion. So this is a wonderful force. We cannot imagine our daily works without the frictional force. Neither you can walk, nor you can run, nor you can hold any object, nor you can speak. Nothing is done without frictional force. But who is producing frictional force? There is no source for frictional force. Suppose magnetic force is there. Magnet is a source. Muscular force is there. Muscles are the source. Electric force is there. Charges are the source. But frictional force, no source. Only nature. It comes into play in nature when two bodies are contact with each other. Suppose my hands are contact. Then frictional force comes into play. When you rub like this, heat also means frictional force can produce heat also. Right? So such a natural force which comes into play when two bodies are in contact is called friction. It is a contact force. It acts opposite to the direction of motion. Right? So note down these 3 points, then move to the original topic and what we are going to discuss in the next 3 to 4 days about the friction. So you can learn about so many things about the friction which are very much helpful in our day-to-day life. Right? Hope you are with your notebooks and you're writing all the 4 branches. Okay. So I'll move to our today's original topic in details. Just introduce you. See here, chapter number 4, friction. So what we are going to learn? We are going to about what is friction, what are the types of frictions, what are the laws of frictions, what are the advantages and disadvantages of friction. So what is the angle of friction? So what is the effect of friction when a body is moving on a rough horizontal surface? When surface is smooth, friction won't come into play. When surface is rough, only friction is more. Right? So all these points we'll discuss in the different synopsis. Okay. So now we start with the introduction part. Synopsis 1. See here. Friction plays a very important role in our daily lives. Right? It plays very important role. It impedes the motion of the object, means opposes. Impedes is nothing but opposes. Without it, we could not walk, we could not drive a car, we could not climb ropes or use mills. Nothing can be done without frictional force. Nothing can be done without frictional force. So friction is a contact force that opposes the relative motion of two bodies. It is a complex phenomena for which there is no fundamental theory. It is a complete nature. However, the basic facts concerning friction between dry and lubricant surface are fairly simple. It is a natural phenomena that assumes the friction caused by roughness of the surface is in contact. So when, for example, when you are placing one book on table, right? You are placing book on table. So they are in contact. Is here there is a contact between the book and table. We'll think that there is a smooth surfaces, but we cannot see the interlockings. There is some interlockings between the book and table. So they are fixed, just like this you can see here. So suppose say this is the interlockings of book, and in that the table will fix here. So because of interlocking, that is called interlocking. So because of interlocking only, we can find the force acting. That is a frictional force acting. Right? Interlocking between two surfaces. Even though they appear very smooth, every smooth surface will have invisible roughness. Of course, on rough surfaces, friction is more only. Okay? Such kind of force which comes into play when two surfaces are in contact is called friction. Okay? So, the force which opposes the relative motion between two surfaces in contact is called friction. Whenever two bodies are in contact, whatever the bodies they are, there comes frictional force. Blindly remember. The force of friction always opposes the applied force that may push or pull. So when you are applying force on anything, it is acted upon by opposite force called friction. The force of friction depends on the following parameters. On which factors it depends? Number one, force of friction is produced only when one object tends to move or is actually moving on other object. Right? Then push a heavy box and try to move from left to right. Does it move when you apply the small force on it? No. Why? Because the force you are applying is less than the frictional force. When you apply small force, body cannot move. Why? Because the frictional force acting on the body is more than the force applied by you. When you applied force is more than the frictional force, then body starts moving. Right? So friction prevents the movement of until force applied is greater than the surface of the contact. So it tends to stop the moving object. I told already. When a body is thrown on the floor, it travels for some distance and comes to rest. Why? Because of the frictional force. It is also tend to prevent the stationary object from moving. So the force helps us to body to move. Force makes the body to stop. Right? Such a kind of natural force is known as frictional force. Clear? Right? This is our friction and the factors affecting the friction. Before knowing, and I show a video also for you. So before knowing about the types of frictions, how the frictions are classified, first you see that video on same friction, then we move to the next part. Okay? Was the video related to friction here? What we are going to learn in this chapter, already I told. Frictional force, advantages, disadvantages, how to reduce the friction, how to increase the friction, so many things.
Frictional force. If a force is necessary to move an object, another force is required to stop it. This stopping force can be exerted by a person or an obstacle. However, the moving object comes to rest even in the absence of these forces. When we hold a pen in vertical direction as shown, the gravitational pull acts on the pen in downward direction. But as the pen is stationary, we can say that the total force acting on the pen is 0. This gravitational force acting on a pen is overcome by the force exerted by our fingers. Similarly, when we slide a book on a tabletop, it stops after moving a certain distance. Here, the tabletop exerts force on the book, which is responsible to slow it down and then stop the relative motion between the tabletop and the book. Friction plays a very important role in our daily life. We are able to write, walk, apply brakes to slow down the vehicle, tie knots, fix nails and screws, make woven clothes because of friction. Force of friction not only tends to stop a moving object, it also tends to stop a stationary object from moving. That is why it is difficult to move the heavy box. Properties of frictional force. It is produced only when one body tends to move or is actually moving on another body. It always opposes relative motion between the surfaces of contact. Example of contact force, irrespective of the direction of the motion.
Types of friction. To move a stationary object, you have to apply force. As you apply continuously increasing force to the stationary object, the force of friction also increases. The force of friction between two or more solid objects which are not moving relative to each other is called static friction. As you apply more force, there comes a point when the object starts moving. At this point, the static friction is the maximum. Once the box begins to move, it is easier to slide it. This is because now, relative to the floor, the box is moving and the irregularities of the box and the floor do not get enough time to lock into each other. The friction produced between a surface and an object sliding over it is called sliding friction. Moving a box kept on a stand with wheels is much easier as the wheels roll over the surface of the floor. The friction produced between the rolling object and the surface is called rolling friction. It is easy to observe that the force required to start the motion of an object is more than the force required to continue to keep it in motion. It is thus justified to say that sliding friction is less than static friction. Also, rolling an object is easier than sliding it. Hence, rolling friction is less than sliding friction. We can simply express it as static friction greater than sliding friction greater than rolling friction. Now you understand why it is convenient to pull a heavy travel bag fitted with rollers than sliding it. The principle of rolling friction is used in machines by using ball bearings. Ball bearings are small metallic balls which roll between two moving surfaces and reduce friction between them.
इस दिवाली को करें और भी शानदार बजाज इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स के साथ, चाहे गिफ्टिंग हो या अपने घर को करना.
Friction. To understand friction, let us consider the following example. Place the ball on the floor and push the ball to set it rolling. You will observe that the ball slows down after covering some distance and finally stops rolling and comes to a stop. Is there any force that acts on the ball and stops it? What is this force called? This force is known as friction and is always directed opposite to the direction of motion. Friction acts between two surfaces on contact, which can be solid, liquid, or gas. Friction can have many effects. Wear and tear. Compare the soles of a new pair of shoes with the ones that you have been wearing for some time. What causes the soles to wear out? The force of friction between the ground and the soles of your shoes wears out the soles. For example, parts of machines, tires of vehicles, etc. get worn due to the force of friction. Produces heat. When you rub your palms together, heat is produced. This is because friction produces heat. Advantages and disadvantages of friction. What would happen if there is no force of friction acting in the following scenarios? A ball is rolled on ground. You walk on a road. You apply brakes to your bicycle. Without friction, the ball will never stop. You will not be able to walk and the bicycle will not stop. If friction did not exist, there would be no grip between the surfaces. Hence, friction plays a very important role in our day-to-day life. Advantages of friction. Friction between a pen and paper enables you to write. Without friction, the pen will slip over the paper. Friction helps in fixing a nail onto a wall. A matchstick burns on striking a matchbox due to friction between the two surfaces. Friction between the feet and the ground enables you to walk. If there was no friction, you would slip as soon as you tried to walk. Buses, trucks, cars, etc. are able to move on the road due to the friction between the road and the tires.
How important friction in our day-to-day life. So we cannot imagine also.
Disadvantages of friction. Friction causes wear and tear of surfaces and materials.
Disadvantage.
For example, tires of buses, cars, trucks, etc. wear out due to the friction between them and the road. Soles of shoes wear out due to friction. Moving parts of machines such as screws and ball bearings need to be replaced as they too wear out due to friction. Friction between surfaces generates heat. You have seen this while rubbing your palms. However, generation of heat is not always useful. Various parts of machines get damaged due to the heat generated by friction and need to be replaced frequently. Lot of energy is wasted when a machine gets heated due to friction. Also, energy is wasted to overcome the force of friction while moving an object. Methods of increasing friction. Tires of vehicles are corrugated to increase the friction between them and the surface of the road. Increased friction provides tires a better grip on the road. Soles of shoes used by players have spikes on them. The spikes increase friction and provide a firm grip on the ground while playing. Kabaddi players rub sand on their hands to increase their grip. Soles of shoes are grooved to increase friction. This enables us to walk without slipping. Ways of reducing friction. Lubricants are substances that help to reduce friction in machines. Grease or oil is applied between the moving parts of machines to reduce friction. Ball bearings are used for rolling two surfaces over each other. Wheels are used for moving heavy suitcases and bags. Wheels offer less friction and hence make it easier to move heavy items. Streamlined shape of fish, boats, birds, aircrafts, etc. reduces friction and helps them to move in water and air easily. Methods of increasing and reducing friction. Have you noticed wrestlers and gymnasts applying some coarse substance in their hands? Why do soles of shoes and slippers have grooves? Why do players sprinkle powder on the carom board? It is either to increase or reduce friction. Friction can be increased or decreased according to
about the friction. Complete picture is given. Total chapter means what is friction, what are the types of frictions, what is the use of friction, what is the disadvantage of friction, how to increase the friction and how to reduce the friction. Whenever you get the doubts, you can go through this video again in YouTube or your groups which we are sending the recorded video, right? So far we learned about the what is exactly the friction, which is the force opposes the motion of a body and is a natural force which comes into play when two bodies are in contact. And there are some factors also there which influence the friction, right? So now this is the types of frictions. When you compare the types of friction, there are three types of frictions. For example, I'll tell. Suppose you place one block of wood. Say this is a wood. Wood on the floor. Okay, this is floor. You are applying force from here. This is the applied force. And we know that when you are applying force, there is a force opposite is frictional force, small f. So when you apply the minimum force, the block won't move because, so when you apply the minimum force, so frictional force is more than the applied force. Then body won't move. But whenever your applied force is more, second case, when applied force is more than the frictional force, then body starts moving there. Right? Means that force which makes the body to start moving, is called the limiting friction or static friction. So the frictional force acting between the two bodies when the body is at rest over the other body is starting friction. So beyond the static friction is called limiting friction. When it crosses the limiting friction, body starts moving. That is called dynamic friction. What is called dynamic friction? Means the body starts in motion. Is called either striding or dynamic friction. See, try to understand. When a body is placed on another body, you are applying the force, but body is not moving, not started moving, because the frictional force acting in opposite direction is more than the force applied by you. But when once body starts moving, it indicates that the applied force is more than frictional force. That stage is called the limiting friction. So before that, that is called static friction, where body is not moving. When body starts moving is called limiting friction. When body continues to move is called striding friction or dynamic friction. If suppose body is rolling like tires, car tires or wheels of your suitcase, rolling is there, then that is called rolling friction. So like this all comes under the different positions of different states of the frictional force, right? Static friction, limiting friction, dynamic friction, rolling friction are the 4 types of the, or striding friction are the 5 types of the frictions. One is more than, static friction is greater than everyone. When once body starts moving, it keep moving. So rolling friction is very less, right? So static friction, Fs you can say, is greater than the dynamic friction, which is greater than rolling friction. So rolling friction is very less. That is the reason we'll use the wheels for our suitcases, so that we can overcome the friction easily. Right? So this friction force depends on the normal force. Suppose when you are placing any body over the other, the weight acts in downward direction. That is weight of the body. But same time, this body will exert force in opposite direction. Action and reaction. And this force is called normal force. A force acting perpendicular between the two surfaces is called normal friction. There is also one kind of force acting between the two bodies which are in contact. Right? Clear? This is about the completely types of friction and normal reaction. Right? This is completely about the one synopsis. So we completed the one synopsis, and next we are going to continue about some important formulas about the friction in synopsis 2. Similarly, how to find out the angle of friction by simple mathematical formula. What is the magnitude of kinetic friction, static friction, rolling friction? Then what are the advantages of friction? Just now we have seen the video, everything. Suppose friction is very important to walk, very important to hold the object, very important to move any body. But some cases it is disadvantage also, because it produces the heat. So when you are, when your cycle tires or car tires, as 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 2 years, they rub because of friction with the road, they spoil. We need to replace them. That is a disadvantage only. Some machines, because of the heat produced by friction, machines will damage. We have to replace the machines. That is a disadvantage. But there are some methods are there by which we can reduce the friction. Suppose if you see in your cycle, you'll put the oil or grease to avoid the sound. Correct or not? Or brakes also will apply some oil sometimes. Or even door also, when door is in rainy season, when door gets sounds, we'll use the oil to reduce the sound, because that is the lubrication to reduce the friction force. So many things are there to know about the friction. So we'll continue in the next class, that is on Friday or Saturday, whatever it may be. We'll continue and we'll know about the different methods of reducing, increasing advantages and disadvantages of friction, and finally about the friction of the liquids also. How the liquids exert pressure. So why bird is in the particular shape, why aeroplane shape is different from the car, why fish is given particular shape. This is one kind of method to reduce the friction, that is called streamlined shape. Okay, the shapes and all we'll discuss in the next class in details, and we'll conclude this chapter. Okay, so that's all about the what we learned today is about what is friction, what are the factors of friction, what are the types of friction, and already we have seen very important video which completely explains about the advantage, disadvantage, methods of reducing, increase the friction. Total synopsis clearly explained. Same thing will continue in the next class, and understand more importance of the frictional force, right? So you can see on the screen, that is your homework for today, daily homework. Define friction, mention types of frictions. Write the question in your notebook and write the answer in the same notebook, and make the corrections, signature from your teacher and parents on regular basis, right? So that's all for today about the friction, and I will continue same in the next class. Thank you, students. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.